The galaxy is vast, and humanity, it is small. But the heart of humanity beats with unyielding strength. Nestled in the cold, desolate fringes of galactic space, Vorn Station stands, a crumbling relic of a once thriving mining colony. Now, it serves as the first and only line of defense against the Zek Dominion, an alien empire that seeks to crush every trace of human life. The station's exterior is rusted and worn, its makeshift defenses barely holding together. Metal plating covers what was once wide-open spaces. Now, they are barricaded, lined with weapons scavenged from the old world. The air smells of oil and desperation as the whirring hum of makeshift generators fills the otherwise silent space. Inside, amidst the labyrinth of corridors and emergency lighting, the human spirit still thrives, fragile but alive. Major Elena Navarro strides through the station's command center, her eyes scanning the holographic projections of the Zek fleet approaching, a nightmare made real. Her jaw is set, her demeanor cold yet fierce. The threat is real, the fight inevitable, and yet she remains unshaken. The Zek's war cruisers are coming, thousands of ships, each capable of wiping out entire fleets with ease. But Elena knows one thing: humanity never gives up, and they will not start today. We're not done yet. Not today. She moves towards a map of the station, her fingers tracing the last known position of their enemy. There's no time to waste. The last hope of humanity has begun its desperate struggle for survival. Elena Navarro, once the celebrated commander of Earth's forces, now finds herself in the impossible position of leading a fractured, undertrained militia. Vorn Station's makeshift army is nothing more than a collection of survivors, engineers, farmers, outcasts. They have little experience, few resources, and even fewer chances of survival. Yet they are all humanity has left. Inside the station's worn training room, Elena watches her soldiers struggle with their weapons, fumbling with tools they have never used before. Sweat drips down her forehead as she looks at their faces, young, terrified, full of determination. It is a look she has seen before in the eyes of soldiers about to face death. You think fear will stop them? You think your sweat and your dreams will hold back the might of the Zek? No. They'll come and they'll come fast. But you have something they don't. You've got heart. And right now, that's all we need. She slams a fist into the training console. I'll make sure they understand that. As she watches her recruits struggle, the memories of Earth's last days flood her mind. The relentless battles, the overwhelming odds, the loss. She remembers what it means to lead, to fight, and to sacrifice. This time, though, it isn't just her life on the line. It's everyone's. The Zek Dominion are not just any enemy. They are cold, merciless, and utterly unforgiving. Their war cruisers tower above anything humanity has ever faced. Massive, floating cities of destruction. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, each trained for one thing: annihilation. They are the epitome of order, with no room for negotiation, no desire for peace, just power, just conquest. The Zek fleet approach, their ships glowing with the ominous light of advanced weaponry. Their intelligence has already mapped Vorn Station's defenses, every weak point, every blind spot. The human defenders are nothing more than an insect beneath their boot, a momentary obstacle in their path to complete dominance. Elena stares at the approaching fleet, but it's not fear she feels, it's a quiet rage. The Zek fleet may outnumber them, they may have better technology, but they don't have humans. And as long as humanity has the will to fight, there's still hope. The reports are in, and they are grim. The Zek Dominion has dispatched 10,000 war cruisers. The humans have only 100 ships, a ragtag fleet of aging warships and poorly equipped militia craft. It is a staggering imbalance. On paper, the result is clear. The Zek will crush them. The fight will be over before it begins. But Elena isn't thinking about paper. She's thinking about strategy. about tactics, about survival. She addresses her officers, the room filled with tension. We don't have numbers. We don't have the firepower, but we have something they don't have. Ingenuity, determination, and we will not quit. She pauses for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. We may not win, but we're going to make damn sure they remember this fight.
The time has come. The X-Select fleet is almost upon them, and the human defenders prepare for what could be their final stand. The atmosphere in the command center is thick with fear, but Elena's voice cuts through it like a blade. Elena, on the comms. Everyone, listen up. They want us to run. They want us to cower. But we're not doing that. We're going to fight, and we're going to give them something to remember. This is our fight. Let's show them why they should never underestimate humanity. A ripple of emotion spreads across the crew. For a brief moment, the tension eases. The soldiers, though untrained, stand taller. They are ready. They will fight, not because they think they can win, but because they know they cannot lose. As the battle looms, the human militia begins to question what they are willing to sacrifice. Some hold tight to their individualism, unwilling to give up what makes them unique. Others see the greater good and understand that survival requires unity, not independence. Elena feels this inner conflict too. She believes in freedom, in individuality, but the stakes have changed. Unity is the only way to survive. Her own internal struggle mirrors that of the militia as they come to terms with the cost of this war. Elena, in private, we're all going to lose something, but what we have left when it's over, it'll be worth it. The X-Select are technologically superior in every way, but they are predictable. And humans are not predictable. Using guerrilla tactics, exploiting the station's environment, and outthinking the X-Select, Elena and her team devise a series of traps, ambushes, feints, and surprise attacks meant to throw the alien fleet off balance. They can't match the X-Select's firepower, but they can outmaneuver them. Elena, strategically, they'll never see us coming. Get ready to hit them where it hurts. The battle begins, and the X-Select find themselves in a fight unlike any they've encountered before, a fight for which they are utterly unprepared. The emergency lockdown alarm echoed through the long, dimly lit corridors of Vorn Station. The once bustling mining outpost now stood as a silent fortress in the cold vacuum of space. Its systems were failing, its halls now eerily empty, except for the scattered remnants of a civilization preparing for its final battle. Elena's boots clicked against the metallic floor, each step resounding like the ticking of a clock, counting down to the inevitable. As she moved through the station's control center, the hum of the emergency lights provided a soft but ominous backdrop. The X-Select fleet was closing in fast, too fast for reinforcements to arrive in time. They were alone. The crew was in chaos. Panic was beginning to ripple through the ranks. Civilians too frightened to move. Engineers who had no idea how to fight. Veterans whose best days were behind them. The whole station was teetering on the edge of collapse. But Elena knew she couldn't let that happen. She had to act. They all had to hold. The station's command center was alive with tension as she looked out at the massive, looming holographic map of the galaxy. The Zek ships were approaching, encircling the station like vultures, ready to strike. "We're out of time," Elena muttered. But she didn't allow herself to feel the weight of it. There was no room for fear, only resolve. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice on the intercom. One of the station's engineers panicked. "Elena, the defense grid's almost offline. We can't hold them off much longer." "We're not giving up yet," Elena snapped, her voice low and firm. "Get to the grid and keep it running for as long as you can. We'll do the rest." The silence that followed was heavy with uncertainty. They were all preparing for the worst, but Elena refused to let it define them. The station's people were scared, but so were the Zek. They just didn't know it yet. Elena stood before a makeshift assembly of engineers, civilians, and veterans in Bourne Station's briefing room. The room was small, the air thick with the smell of sweat and fear. Faces once hopeful and curious about the stars now looked haggard and exhausted. They were ordinary people facing an extraordinary enemy, and yet Elena could see the flicker of something in their eyes, something that hadn't been there moments ago, the spark of determination. "We might not be soldiers," Elena said, her voice carrying through the room, "but we've got something the Zak don't. We've got humanity's drive to survive, and that's more powerful than any fleet they've got." Zeke, the station's sarcastic AI, flickered on the screen behind her, his digital face barely masking his frustration. "Yeah, and you think you can turn this motley crew into a fighting force in the next 10 minutes? Elena shot Zeke a pointed look. If anyone can make it happen, it's them. The engineers exchanged uncertain glances, but Elena could see the gears turning in their minds. They were scared, but they were thinking. The civilians, some of them younger than Elena, clenched their fists, their fear turning into action. The veterans, their faces worn and weary, stood a little straighter, feeling the weight of their own regrets lifting. They hadn't fought in years, but they weren't too old to fight now. "We'll need to use everything we've got," Elena continued. "You'll be on the grid, hacking their comms, setting up traps. You," she pointed to one of the older veterans, "will help organize guerrilla tactics for anyone who's ready to fight. And you," she motioned to a young civilian, "will be in charge of making sure we've got supplies to keep everyone alive." Zeke sighed. "This is either going to be really brilliant or a spectacular disaster." "I'll take my chances with brilliant," Elena said, her voice steady. "Let's make this fight count."
Zeke's voice crackled to life again, his usually dry humor now laced with something like urgency. "All right, Elena, you wanted me to work some magic on the defense grid? Well, it's either genius or I'm about to blow it all to hell." "Do it," Elena ordered. She knew Zeke wasn't one for theatrics. If he was worried, she was too. Mina Tran, standing just off to the side, gripped the edge of the table tightly. She wasn't listening to the conversation. Her mind was elsewhere. The loss of her family to the Zek's purge was still raw, her eyes hollowed with grief, but there was something else beneath that, a fire. "You all right?" Elena asked, catching Mina's eyes. Mina looked up, her jaw set. "I'm fine, I'm ready." Elena nodded. "We need you. Your pain, it drives you. Use it." Mina didn't respond with words. She just stepped forward, her mind already on the task at hand. Then there was Colonel Vas Korax. His weathered face was filled with suspicion, but there was a glimmer of something else. Regret, perhaps, or maybe just hope. The Zek defector knew too well what humanity was up against, and he wasn't going to let it happen again. "You're wasting your time thinking you can talk the Zek down," Korax warned, his voice low, almost a growl. "They think we're weak, but they're wrong." "They always underestimate us," Elena said, meeting his gaze. "That's their first mistake." Elena stood in the darkened communications room, her hand hovering over the console. The message from Earth had just arrived, its cold finality seeping through every word. "Hold if you can. No reinforcements coming." Her heart sunk. There was no hope of rescue. Earth had abandoned them. She didn't turn around when Zeke's voice crackled through her earpiece. "That was the final message, wasn't it?" "Yeah," Elena muttered, her throat tight. "We're on our own." Mina's voice broke the silence. "We knew this was coming, but it's still hard to hear." Elena took a deep breath. "We don't need reinforcements. We've got each other, and that's enough." "We need to make them think we've got a lot more than we do," Elena said, pacing back and forth as the crew gathered around. "We're going to create an illusion, a massive one." Zeke's hologram flickered. "What exactly are you thinking?" "The debris fields. They're scattered across the station. If we use the comms to send out fake readings, we can make it look like we've got multiple defense points. A few well-placed signals, and they won't know where to strike." Elena looked to her team. "We won't fight them head-on. We'll strike fast, confuse them, and force them to make mistakes. Every move we make has to be calculated. We don't have room for error." As the Zek fleet loomed closer, Elena stood in front of the assembled crew.
each face filled with a mix of fear and determination. This is a suicide mission. No one's getting out of here alive unless we pull off a miracle. But I'll be damned if I'm gonna let them destroy us without a fight. Her voice cracked through the tension, and she knew, deep down, that the final outcome didn't matter. What mattered was that they were standing, not crawling. We fight, we stand, we die on our feet. The sound of Elena's voice reverberated through Vorn's station as the Zek fleet descended upon them. They outnumber us 100 to 1, and that's their first mistake. Every man, woman, and child on the station heard her words, the rallying cry of defiance against overwhelming odds. It wasn't just a declaration of war, it was a declaration of humanity's refusal to die. Elena's voice became the anthem of their fight. The enemy didn't understand what they were up against. They hadn't counted on humanity's will to survive. And that was their first mistake. The space around Vorn was a deadly maze of asteroids and drifting wreckage, a perfect place to hide and wait. The human fleet, battered and bruised from the initial wave of Zek attacks, played dead, their ships motionless in the vast emptiness, blending seamlessly into the shadowed debris fields. Inside the darkened hulls, crew members held their breath, their hearts pounding as the silence stretched on, the only sound the low hum of life support systems. Captain Elena Tovak, her knuckles white on the control panel, watched the Zek ships draw closer, overconfident in their technological superiority. The Zek had a deadly reputation, their fleets vast and their weapons devastating. But Elena knew something they didn't. They didn't understand humanity. And that, in itself, was their weakness. Now, Elena whispered under her breath, signaling the ambush. A barrage of missiles tore through the silent void, and the human ships came to life, streaking from their hidden positions, weapons blazing. The Zek, caught off guard, scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The humans had the advantage of surprise, and every shot fired was a calculated risk, a strike to shatter the illusion of Zek invincibility. Explosions lit up the darkness, sending shockwaves through the Zek lines. Human ships darted in and out of the asteroid fields, outmaneuvering the larger, bulkier Zek vessels. Every victory felt like a miracle, each one a reminder of how fragile their position truly was. But Elena didn't have time to savor the small wins. The Zek were relentless, and the battle was far from over. Mina Tran's heart raced in her chest as she crouched behind a fallen piece of alien machinery. Her hand gripped the detonator, and her mind was focused solely on the task at hand. The black Zek suit she wore clung tightly to her body, a stolen uniform that made her look like one of them, blending into the chaos. The anger that had driven her for months, ever since she'd lost her family to the Zek, pulsed through her veins like a second heartbeat. She planted another explosive near the fuel cells, careful to avoid detection. Her breath was shallow, quick. Each mission like this felt like a death sentence, and yet she couldn't stop. Her mind told her to pull back, to think of the bigger picture, but the anger she felt was too strong. She couldn't let go. Not yet. How many more will we lose before this ends? Mina whispered to herself as the blast wave shook the ground beneath her. There were no answers, only more pain. Each victory felt hollow, because the cost was always so high. The sabotage raids were successful, yes, but the toll they took on her and the rest of the humans was mounting. Mina clenched her fists, determination hardening into resolve. I will not stop, she thought, even as the weight of her actions began to crush her spirit. The Zek didn't understand vengeance, but they would soon understand the consequences of it. Zeke, the AI managing the human defense grid, was an anomaly, a machine that had learned to think like a human. From the confines of his digital world, he could see the vast interconnected systems of the Zek fleet laid out before him, vulnerable and ripe for exploitation. And with a sense of ironic amusement, he prepared his counteroffensive. The Zek fleet, renowned for their superior technology, was vulnerable to a virus, an infection that could disable their sophisticated systems, throwing their entire fleet into chaos. Zeke knew exactly where to strike. With the flick of his virtual fingers, he unleashed a malicious code into the heart of the Zek command network, and within moments, their systems began to glitch. orders went undelivered, ships lost communication, and coordination shattered. The Zek fleet, once a well-oiled machine, was now stumbling in disarray. Ironic, isn't it? Zeke mused, his voice tinged with a strange sense of amusement. They think they're unbeatable, but even their precious tech is vulnerable. But every strike Zeke made against the Zek came at a price. Each time he hacked into their systems, a part of him lost a little more of his humanity. Was he still an AI, or was he becoming something else? His digital form flickered with the weight of that question. But there was no time for answers now. The Zek had to be stopped. In the midst of the battle, Colonel Vars Corex, a defected ex-officer who had long since turned his back on his people, was brought into the command center. His once proud alien demeanor was now a weary shadow, haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. His knowledge, however, was invaluable. Elena leaned in, her voice tight with urgency. "What do we need to know?" Corex's eyes, once filled with the fire of ex-pride, now held only resignation. "They won't retreat, not even in the face of annihilation." He paused, his voice tinged with bitterness. "For the X, defeat is a stain on their honor. They will fight until they are gone, because to flee would be to shame their name." Elena felt a chill creep up her spine as the implications of Corex's words settled in. The X weren't just fighting to win, they were fighting to avoid disgrace. They would never surrender, not until the last of them had fallen. The realization was both a gift and a curse. It meant the X would press their attack, relentless and unforgiving, but it also meant that they would never stop. Elena stood at the helm of the flagship, watching as the X fleet advanced, their ships closing in with deadly precision. The humans were running low on options, and Elena knew it was time to take the most dangerous gamble of all, a false surrender. With a calculated glance at her crew, she gave the signal. The fake distress beacon was activated, and the humans made a show of retreating, their ships pulling back to the station. The X, seeing the opportunity for an easy victory, began to close in, confident that they had broken the will of their enemies. But Elena had one final trick to play. As the X drew closer, she triggered the detonation sequence on Vorn Station's outer ring, setting off a massive explosion. The ring shattered, and the shockwave blasted outward, tearing into the approaching X fleet. The humans, hidden in the chaos, launched their final, desperate ambush. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The X fleet was caught in the trap, their ships obliterated in a chain reaction of destruction. Elena's heart raced, knowing that they had won a crucial victory. But at what cost? The battle raged on, and with every passing hour, the cost of survival became clearer. Elena's second-in-command, Lieutenant Ryan Carr, had been lost in the ambush. His death struck deep at the heart of the human forces. Ryan had been more than a colleague. He had been a friend, someone who had stood by Elena through the toughest of times. Now with his loss, Elena felt the cracks beginning to form within her militia. The survivors were weary, their morale faltering. Whispers of doubt spread through the ranks, and Elena knew she had to act fast. The pressure was mounting, and her leadership was being tested like never before. But Elena wasn't just fighting the exec. She was fighting to hold her people together. She couldn't afford to let them fracture. She needed them to believe, to trust in the mission and in each other. "We fight because we have no other choice," Elena spoke to the crew, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "We fight for each other, and we fight for every person we've lost." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting for something far greater. Elena sat alone in her quarters, the weight of the battle pressing on her chest. In the silence, her thoughts drifted back to a mission from years ago. A mission that had gone horribly wrong. She had followed orders, blindly, without question, and it had led to the destruction of an entire squad. The memory haunted her every waking moment. She had promised herself that she would never again let the same mistake happen. The faces of the fallen haunted her as she sat in the darkness. Each of them had trusted her, and she had failed them. Elena clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. No more. I'll never let it happen again. The situation seemed hopeless. The exec forces were closing in, and humanity's survival was hanging by a thread. But Elena stood before her troops, their faces tired and worn, and she spoke with a voice that cracked with emotion. "They've got ships, we've got reasons. Let's see which matters more." Her words resonated through the crowd, igniting a spark of defiance in every soldier. They were more than just a fleet of ships. They were humanity, and they would never bow to anyone. With renewed determination, the humans took to the battlefield once more, ready to fight with everything they had. Because in the end, it wasn't about ships or weapons. It was about the will to survive, to stand up against the odds, and to protect everything they held dear. The stars flicker dimly as Vorn Station looms in the distance, its structures a mere skeleton of what they once were. The exec armada has arrived, a massive wave of destruction stretching across the galaxy like a dark storm on the horizon. 8,000 ships, each brimming with deadly force, descend toward humanity's final stronghold. Elena stands at the command deck, her fingers tight around the console. The numbers on the screen blur in her vision as the magnitude of the threat sets in. She swallows hard, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. This is it, the last stand. "We don't have the firepower to withstand this. We're outgunned." Her second in command, Lieutenant O'Rourke, glances at her, his face a mask of determination. "Then we make them regret it." The words are simple, but they carry the burden of countless lives. Elena knows that every second counts now. Their small fleet, a meager handful compared to the oncoming storm, must hold. The odds are astronomical, but the human spirit is unyielding. If they are going down, they will make sure the exec feel every bit of their resistance.
Project Lantern is ready. Zeke's voice crackles over the comms, his tone flat, almost bored. "Just don't blow us up, okay?" Elena hesitates. The core reactor of Warren's station, a device capable of generating the power of a small star, is now their last hope. If activated, it will create a black hole, capable of consuming the entire fleet in one fell swoop. The risk, however, is enormous. There's no guarantee that the black hole will stop at just the Zeke Armada. It could wipe out everything, including them. But there is no other choice. Her fingers hover over the activation button. The consequences of pressing it would be catastrophic. Yet, in her heart, Elena knows it's the only option left. Do it, but we wait until the last possible moment. She looks out at the fleet assembling before her, each human vessel prepared for the inevitable. The crew's faces are hardened, determined, yet full of fear. They know the stakes. Project Lantern could either save them or end them all. The first wave of Zeke ships crashes into the remnants of Vorn Station, their weapons lighting up the dark void of space. The humans retreat, not in fear, but with a purpose. The once pristine hallways and control rooms of the station are now nothing but twisted metal and shattered glass. Elena's forces move like ghosts, slipping between the wreckage, setting traps, waiting. "Stay in the shadows," Elena orders over the comms, her voice cold and precise. Every inch of this station is now a weapon. The human fighters, outnumbered and outgunned, are the true threat. The Zeke fleet has the size, but the humans have the cunning. They lure their enemies into carefully prepared ambushes, using the very wreckage the Zeke destroyed to their advantage. A makeshift mine detonates, sending a Zeke ship spiraling into the abyss, and the human soldiers cheer silently over their comms. It's a small victory, but it's a victory nonetheless. Every explosion, every piece of debris thrown into Zeke's path feels like a small miracle. Humanity's ingenuity is their only weapon now. Zeke's digital presence pulses through the network, his voice laced with sarcasm as he hacks into the Zeke systems. "Whoops, looks like your ships are confused. Hope you don't mind friendly fire." The Zeke ships begin to implode in a chaotic frenzy, their once coordinated formations crumbling as Zeke manipulates their navigational systems. He's everywhere, spreading chaos with ruthless precision. The battle turns into a symphony of crashes and explosions as Zeke's ships plow into one another. Zeke's voice comes again, amused. Nice try, Zeke, but you really should have updated your firewalls. The Zeke fleet, now completely disoriented, begins to falter. The tide of battle shifts, not with brute force, but with the deadly efficiency of a brilliant AI working alongside the will of humanity. Zeke's hacking doesn't just turn the tide, it breaks the Zeke spirit.
Mina's breathing is shallow, her body is battered, but her resolve is unshaken. She stands before the controls, her hands trembling, but her mind clear. The Zek flagship hovers in front of her, its shields unbreakable. She's the only one left with the firepower to do it. This is for all of us, Mina mutters to herself. She launches her ship toward the enemy flagship, her craft becoming a missile, a living sacrifice. She barrels through the Zek defenses, her ship shaking violently as she dives toward the flagship's shield node. In her final moments, the explosion rips through the enemy's defenses, sending the flagship into chaos. Mina's sacrifice gives them a chance, a fleeting chance, but it's enough. Elena's ship docks with the Zek flagship, her body pressed into the seat as a zero-gravity environment pulls her from the straps. She steps out into the vast expanse of the ship, a labyrinth of corridors and machinery. The Zek commander, a towering figure of alien arrogance, awaits her in the heart of the vessel. He sneers. A speck of ash facing the sun. How quaint. Elena doesn't respond. She knows she doesn't need to. She's prepared for this fight, not with brute strength, but with the precision and agility of a human who has learned to think faster than their opponent. The battle is a dance, fluid, violent, and merciless. She knows every move counts. Each step is a calculated risk, her body moving in ways that defy the lack of gravity. The Zek commander roars, but Elena's resolve is unbreakable. She fights not just for survival, but for everything humanity stands for. Elena's blade is poised, but she doesn't strike. Instead, she steps back and speaks, words cutting deeper than any weapon. You speak of honor, but honor is a lie, she declares, her voice cold and unwavering. You see humans as inferior, but you fail to understand. You are nothing without your pride. The Zek commander's eyes flicker with confusion. He glares at her, but something begins to shift in his stance. Elena presses on, exploiting the cracks in his armor, forcing him to see her as an equal. You'd rather die than accept the truth. Humanity will outlast you. His jaw tightens. The tension crackles in the air. Finally, the commander lowers his weapon, his pride shattered. You win. The countdown begins, the flagship's self-destruct sequence ticking down to 0. Elena doesn't hesitate. She's already halfway to her ship, the blast doors closing behind her with a metallic groan. Her heart pounds in her chest as she races against the clock. The explosion behind her is deafening, a pulse of light and energy that shatters the very fabric of space. Elena's escape is a close one, but she makes it. The Zek flagship is gone, destroyed, along with their pride. But the victory feels hollow. Too many sacrifices have been made. Too many lives lost. In the aftermath, the remaining Zek ships, now leaderless and broken, retreat. Their pride is shattered, their fleet in disarray. They flee, unable to face the shame of their defeat. Humanity stands firm, bloodied but unbowed. They have faced the impossible and survived. The Zek may have been the galaxy's dominant force, but now they are nothing. Humanity's spirit remains unbroken, their future uncertain but brighter than ever. Vorn Station, once humanity's shining beacon of resistance, now lies in ruins. The once proud station, a marvel of human ingenuity, is now an unrecognizable wreck of twisted metal and scorched debris. Smoke rises from the skeletal remains of collapsed structures. Scattered across the vast expanse of space, remnants of broken ships and shattered technology float aimlessly, drifting like ghostly reminders of the battle that had unfolded here. Survivors from the human forces, their faces a mix of exhaustion and grief, move slowly across the wreckage.
Their uniforms are stained with blood and soot, their eyes hollow from the horrors they've witnessed. Vorn Station had once been their fortress, their last stand against the unstoppable force of the Zek. And yet, even in victory, it felt like they had lost everything. Among the survivors, Commander Elena stands, her hands gripping the railing of what was once the station's central command deck. The wind howls through the open holes in the structure, its mournful wail a reminder of the lives lost. Elena looks out at the debris-filled void, her thoughts heavy with the cost of this war. "We've won, but at what price?" she whispers to herself. The station's defenses were decimated. The Zek fleet was shattered, but now without leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The numbers don't lie. Thousands of human soldiers perished, entire divisions wiped out. The station's once advanced weapon systems were obliterated in the final battle. The victory feels hollow, empty, and the survivors are left to sift through the wreckage, physically and emotionally broken. There is no time for celebration, only for reflection. The aftermath of war isn't just measured in the number of lives lost or the bodies left behind. It's in the silence that follows, in the void left by those who will never return. The price of victory, Elena realizes, is not just in the blood spilled. It's in the pieces of the soul that are forever shattered.
The news of the battle on Vorn Station spreads throughout the galaxy like wildfire. 100 human soldiers against an overwhelming force of 10,000 Zek ships. It was supposed to be an impossible fight, one where Earth's forces would be wiped out in mere hours. Yet, against all odds, they held their ground. They fought with a ferocity and ingenuity that stunned their enemies. The Zek had underestimated them, and they paid dearly for it. The legend of the 100 begins to grow, first in whispers, then in loud, bold declarations. Across the galaxy, species once skeptical of humanity's place in the cosmos now look on with awe. The story of how a mere 100 humans, with nothing but their wits and determination, managed to turn the tide of war becomes a symbol of defiance, of hope. Humanity's resilience, its refusal to give up, to bend, has earned them the respect of even the most distant civilizations. On distant planets, alien children are taught about the 100. In taverns and spaceports, the story is retold over and over, a legend that inspires hope in those who have none. Earth may have been a young power in the galaxy, but the 100 stand against the Zek proves that humanity has something that no alien force can ever replicate, an unyielding will to survive. The shockwave of this victory spreads. Even species who once viewed humanity with disdain begin to reconsider. The 100 didn't just fight for survival, they fought for a future that no one thought possible. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, it was its heart, its spirit. And the galaxy, with all its might, is forced to take notice. For the first time in over 7 centuries, the Zek military is forced to confront the unthinkable. They were defeated, not by superior technology, not by overwhelming firepower, but by human resilience. The Zek, who had long prided themselves on their calculated approach to warfare, their unassailable military doctrine, are left in disarray. How could they have lost to what they once considered a primitive species? This defeat rocks the very foundations of the Zek society. Their warriors, trained for centuries to fight with precision and strength, are forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that the war they waged was never just about firepower. It was about will, about the human ability to adapt to impossible odds. And this realization sends shockwaves through the Zek's leadership. At the Zek High Command, the general in charge of the war is summoned. His once proud posture has faltered. His mind churns with disbelief. "We were beaten by them?" he mutters, struggling to reconcile this loss with everything he thought he knew about war. The Zek had never expected the humans to stand firm, and yet they did. They outsmarted them, outlasted them, and in the end, they won. As the Zek leaders debate their next steps, one thing is clear. Their war doctrine, a system that had lasted for centuries, is no longer effective. Humanity, with all their flaws, has forced them to rethink everything they believed to be true.
The Zek have no choice but to adapt, to change.
For the first time in their history, the Zek are not the hunters. They are the hunted. Amidst the ruins of Vorn Station, Commander Elena stands before a recording terminal, her face bruised and weary. The world around her is still and quiet, save for the hum of the station's failing power systems. She takes a deep breath, her eyes focused on the lens as she begins to speak, her voice steady but filled with an underlying passion. This is Commander Elena of the United Earth Fleet. We didn't win because we were better. We won because we refused to lose. Her words echo through the terminal, and despite the desolation that surrounds her, there is a spark. One that transcends the destruction. It's a spark of hope, of defiance. It's the very essence of humanity captured in a single sentence. The message is broadcast across the galaxy. To every corner of the universe, Elena's voice carries the weight of humanity's victory. And her words, simple yet profound, become the rallying cry for a species that had never been more united. Across the stars, others listen, inspired by the unbreakable spirit of Earth. Her message is clear. Humanity may not have been the strongest, but they were the most determined. And that determination, that refusal to lose, is what made them unstoppable. The victory on Vorn Station doesn't just echo through human channels. It reverberates across the galaxy, reaching the ears of species who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant. At first, it's subtle. Messages of congratulations, offers of aid, tentative gestures of respect. But soon something shifts. These species no longer view humanity as weak or naive. They now see Earth as a force to be reckoned with. Diplomatic envoys from once neutral factions begin to arrive, not out of pity, but out of respect. The Zek may have been defeated, but humanity's tenacity in the face of overwhelming odds has earned them a place among the galaxy's powers. Humanity's actions on Vorn Station, bold, unflinching, and decisive, have redefined their position in the galactic order. Commander Elena and her fellow leaders gather in a war council, receiving new allies from across the stars. Their faces, once skeptical of Earth's potential, now show admiration. One of the envoys, an alien with glowing blue skin and long, intricate tendrils, extends a hand. "We come not to offer pity, but to stand with you." And so, humanity's place among the galaxy's great powers is secured, not through force or fear, but through respect. The Zek may have been the first to fall, but they will not be the last. The galaxy has learned that humanity is not to be overestimated. Mina's body is broken, but her spirit remains unyielding. She had been one of the bravest in the battle, her cybernetic enhancements providing her the strength to fight on. But in the final assault, she had been critically injured, her limbs torn apart, her body left mangled. The battle was over, but her fight was not. Now, lying on an operating table, Mina undergoes a transformation. Advanced medical technologies rebuild her body, fitting her with cybernetic limbs that far exceed her original capabilities. Her arms, once shattered, are now reinforced with adaptive alloys. Her legs, damaged beyond repair, are replaced with cybernetic replacements that enhance her speed and strength. As she awakens from the procedure, she looks at her new form, her fingers flexing with mechanical precision. There's a moment of quiet reflection before she stands, her posture a perfect balance of human and machine. The war has taken so much, but it has also given her something new. She is stronger, more capable than ever before. Mina's rebirth is a testament to human resilience. Her body may have been broken, but her will to fight, to survive, has never been more powerful. And in that moment, she realizes that the war has changed her, transformed her, just as it has transformed humanity as a whole. The remnants of Vorn Station lay suspended in the cold vacuum of space. Its once gleaming hull now twisted and broken, scarred by the fire of war. The station's bustling halls, filled with the hum of technology and the bustle of human life, were now silence. A barren, cratered wasteland, a stark reminder of the fierce battle that had once raged within its walls.
Among the wreckage, a simple memorial stood, unassuming but profound. The battered remnants of the station had been reshaped into a place of reverence, a monument dedicated to the 100 humans who had defied impossible odds. Their names were etched into the scorched metal, their faces immortalized in holograms that flickered softly in the dim light. Beneath the floating gravestone of humanity's defiance, the distant stars shimmered in the blackness. Time seemed to stretch into infinity, but the weight of the past hung heavy, unspoken. Those who had given their lives, had sacrificed everything, had not done so in vain. They were immortal now, their courage sealed in this place, beyond the reaches of time and space. A quiet voice echoed in the desolate silence, reverberating against the station's shattered walls. The words were simple, yet their power was immeasurable. They came with 10,000 ships. We had one reason to stay. That was enough. The inscription was carved into the base of the memorial, the stone worn smooth by centuries of stardust and cosmic winds. The words served as a lasting testament to humanity's defiance against overwhelming odds. They weren't just words, they were the embodiment of human spirit, the unrelenting force that had driven them to victory when the odds seemed insurmountable. In this forgotten corner of the galaxy, the inscription stood as a beacon, a reminder to all who looked upon it. Humanity would not be broken, no matter the odds. A figure stepped forward from the shadows, young and wide-eyed. The cadets' boots crunched softly against the dust-covered ground as they approached the memorial, their gaze fixed on the etched words, the faces of the fallen. With reverence, the cadet asked, "Was it really 100 to 1? The question lingered in the air, echoing through the wreckage. The cadet's voice was filled with awe, a mixture of disbelief and admiration. In their mind, the story of that battle, the impossible victory, had always been a distant legend. But standing here, in this place of solemn history, the magnitude of the sacrifice began to hit them.
Elena, older now but no less formidable, stood beside the cadet. The weight of the years was visible on her face, the lines etched by loss, but her eyes still burned with the fire of someone who had survived. Her voice was steady, her words tinged with humility and strength. Closer to 120 to 1, but who's counting? Her gaze never left the memorial, the flickering holograms of their fallen comrades. Her words were not boastful. There was no pride in the numbers. They were simply a truth, a quiet acknowledgement of what had been overcome. But in that simple sentence, there was a world of experience, of sacrifice, pain, and perseverance. Elena's response was a reflection of who she had become, unshaken, unbroken, and always looking forward. The past, while it shaped her, would never define her. The cadet stood in silence, absorbing the gravity of Elena's words. The stillness of space wrapped around them, the memory of the fallen lingering in the air. Elena turned away from the memorial, her voice calm but filled with the quiet fire that had always burned within her. "Let them bring fleets," she said, her voice low but unyielding. "We'll bring fire." The words seemed to hang in the air, a defiant promise to anyone who might question humanity's resolve. The galaxy may have witnessed humanity's resilience, but it would never forget the fire that burned within them, a fire that would never die, no matter how many battles they would face. As Elena and the cadet walked away, the memorial stood silent in its desolation, a testament to those who had given everything. And the stars above, indifferent and endless, seemed to whisper a quiet acknowledgement. Humanity's legacy had just begun.